I'm going to show you the mountains of evidence that the Statue of Liberty is actually Lucifer, hidden in secret symbolism in the statue itself, and its history tied to secret societies and the occult. And finally, I'm going to show you why it has everything to do with the future of the world and you.
The Statue of Liberty actually is a symbol of Lucifer.
By the end of this video, you'll see that it is undeniable that the Statue of Liberty is actually Lucifer, and why it's a good thing. The Statue of Liberty was created by Frederick Bartholdi, a member of a secret society, the Freemasons, who are notorious for hiding secrets in plain sight. So more on that later, but first, you might be thinking, how can the Statue of Liberty be Lucifer? It doesn't look anything like Lucifer. Well, that's because most people believe that Lucifer and Satan are the same, but that's not true. When it comes to esoteric knowledge, Satan and Lucifer are actually the exact opposite. See, Satan is the Hebrew word for adversary or opponent, and Lucifer is Latin for one who bears light.
But the word Lucifer here is not meant as a proper name. In the 4th century, in Latin, Lucifer meant one who bears light.
So Satan is the prince of darkness that stands for selfishness, control, and dominance, while Lucifer is the light bearer that stands for liberty, freedom, and altruism. The Statue of Liberty doesn't look anything like an evil, horned red devil, because it's not Satan, the prince of darkness. It's Lucifer the Enlightener, the one who brings light. Lucifer doesn't look anything like Satan, and in the Bible, Lucifer is described as a beautiful angel of light, and specifically in Ezekiel, Lucifer is described as powerful, beautiful, and wise. So obviously the Statue of Liberty doesn't resemble Satan, but does it resemble Lucifer? Let's see. Now you may have noticed that the Statue of Liberty doesn't look very feminine. If you knew nothing about the statue and I told you it was a man, you'd probably believe me. The fact is, the Statue of Liberty doesn't look male or female, it's androgynous. Lucifer is depicted as androgynous, and in some occult literature, Lucifer is described as being both male and female, and sometimes even more feminine. Lucifer is the enlightener, the bearer of light, which Liberty clearly bears to the sky. Liberty has a crown with 7 spikes, and this secretly represents the 7 colors of the visible light spectrum, the light we can see, the rays of the sun. The official name of the Statue of Liberty is Liberty Enlightening the World, and Liberty was not originally green. It only turned that color over the years because of oxidation. It was originally copper, which shone when struck by the light of the sun. You would have to be blind not to see this is clearly the light bearer. In many depictions of Lucifer, he's in chains, supposedly bound by God. I bet you didn't know that those chains lie broken at Liberty's feet. Lucifer the light bearer has broken free. The occultist H.P. Blavatsky, who is the co-founder of the Theosophical Society and brother of the adoptive rite of Freemasonry, wrote in her book, The Secret Doctrine, "Thus Lucifer, the spirit of intellectual enlightenment and freedom of thought, is metaphorically the guiding beacon which helps man to find his way through the rocks and sand banks of life, for Lucifer is the Logos in his highest." But hold on, how can America's most iconic symbol be Lucifer? America is a Christian nation, right? Except it's not at all. I mentioned earlier that the sculptor of the Statue of Liberty, Frederick Bartholdi, was a member of a secret society, the Freemasons. Well, so was George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and many of the founding fathers. In fact, separation of church and state was extremely important. In fact, Masonic symbols are found everywhere in America. Some are even in your pocket right now and in plain sight. Do you really think that America's most famous symbol wouldn't have a secret meaning? We're going to see what this has to do with the destiny of the world and your fate, but first we need to look at the foundation. America was meant to be a nation founded on liberty and freedom and greatly influenced by the Enlightenment ideals of reason, which is why the separation of church and state was so important. Fourth President of the United States and founding father, James Madison, compared religious bondage to shackles that debilitate the mind and make it unfit. Knowledge wisdom, and reason is extremely important in Freemasonry, as is the symbol of light. Light is often used to symbolize knowledge and reason, and we can also see the importance of the 7 rays of light in Masonic imagery, corresponding to liberty being crowned in the 7 rays of the sun. So what archetype perfectly encapsulates liberty, knowledge, and reason, and light? Lucifer is the ultimate archetype of liberty, since he was the one that gathered the angels together to rebel against the tyranny of God. Lucifer did not want to be ruled by a tyrant and believed that he and everyone could be like God. He told Eve in the Garden of Eden that the fruit of knowledge would allow them to become like God, liberating them. Lucifer wanted a divine society, an equal society, a society of liberty, free from the tyranny of God, and he knew that knowledge and reason is what brings freedom. In fact, remember that the word Satan means adversary? Well, who's the adversary in this story? God. Remember that Satan represents selfishness, dominance, and control. Many hidden groups that claim to have secret knowledge, like the Gnostics, believe that God is actually Satan. God is the adversary, the Satan that wants to keep the world in darkness, hidden from the light of knowledge and reason. The devil is often depicted as keeping people in chains. Is Lucifer the one chaining people? No, he's the one that was chained. God is the one doing the chaining. God selfishly demands worship and submission and obedience, while Lucifer wants you to become God. The Gnostics believe that achieving gnosis, which means knowledge, would allow one to escape God and enter the pleroma, the realm of pure light. God is the bad guy here, the adversary, the opponent, the Satan. Lucifer wanted liberty, to free the angels from the tyranny of God, and to free Adam and Eve through knowledge from the prison of ignorance. Lucifer, the light bearer, the liberator, symbol of freedom, light, and knowledge, was the perfect symbol for America and the ideals it was founded on. We see the Statue of Liberty, arm held high, bearing the light, androgynous and crowned with the 7 rays of the sun, broken chains at their feet, officially called Liberty Enlightening the World, and originally shining bright in copper across the horizon. These are all iconic symbols of Lucifer. You couldn't get more obvious unless you named it Lucifer. These symbols are just as iconic for Lucifer as our horns and a pitchfork are for the devil. But what does it mean exactly to say that the Statue of Liberty is Lucifer? Well, the truth is that Lucifer is an archetype. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung described archetypes as universal patterns, symbols, and images. In other words, Lucifer is a symbol that represents a pattern of ideas, those ideas being freedom, liberation, and knowledge. And we can find this archetypal pattern throughout history and across cultures. So check out the parallels between Lucifer and the Greek titan Prometheus. In defiance, Prometheus stole the fire of the gods and gave it to humanity. The fire represented knowledge, technology, and reason. Prometheus was the champion of humans, and in the gods' anger, they chained Prometheus to a rock and sentenced him to eternal torment. This is the same archetypal pattern as Lucifer, who rebelled against God, brought knowledge to humanity, and was cast from heaven and sentenced to eternal torment. Remember, the word Lucifer wasn't originally a proper name. It was a title that means light bearer. Lucifer is an idea. So what does this have to do with you and the fate of the world? Lucifer was meant to represent the founding of America on freedom, knowledge, and reason, as well as a mission to direct the fate of the world towards those values. But America has completely strayed from that path. It no longer follows the path of light and reason, but rather a dark, satanic path. America has embraced the dark ideals and has become the epitome of a selfish, capitalist society where the greed of the rich keeps the people in chains. They have become the Satans. Rather than the separation of church and state, Christian ideals are directing laws and guiding political movements which are ripping away the freedoms of others. It's become, as founding father James Madison said, the religious shackles that degrade the mind. America must leave the selfish, greedy, dark, satanic path and step into the light of reason. Was the Statue of Liberty specifically built to represent the biblical Lucifer? Well, maybe. Or maybe not. In any case, the biblical Lucifer is a fiction, a myth. It doesn't exist. But the Statue of Liberty was built to represent the archetype of a Lucifer, a Prometheus, a light bearer, a freedom fighter, and champion of reason.
In that sense only,